Hi, Aneela. Welcome to the Make Life Rich Movement podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Sarah, for having me. I love this idea of making life rich. And when I
Oh,
saw my colleague John, co-founder John, who works out of MHub, saw you looking for podcast interviewees, he reached out to me, and I just love that idea of like, yes, let's make life rich for people, and let's redefine what rich is.
yes. Yes. I love when people understand and I don't have to explain that the title is not about getting financially rich. It's about just making your life rich and enjoying every minute of it because it is so fleeting. So, thank you for seeing the deeper side of my message. I appreciate that very much.
Absolutely.
I was so taken with your company and your invention, which is so cool to say out loud. You invented something and it's something very technologically based. So that's, as old inventions go, you've really you are an inventor. That's super cool. I was super excited to talk about that. I love that this also was a product that was near and dear to your heart, something that you probably would have liked to have had when you were in your younger self going through what you were going through. So I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what led you to creating the company HabitAware?
Yep. Yeah. So, my name is Aneela. First step. I'm born and raised in New York. I now live in Minneapolis, and I've been here for about 12 years, I think, if I'm doing my math right, and if I remember what year it is. Um, and I pull out my hair. And I started pulling out my hair when I was in my teens, my tweens, so about 30 years ago now. And you would have never heard me as a teenager saying I pull out my hair. So this is something that I have come to terms with and come to understand what it truly is and the role it's played in my life, and have that level of calmness toward this mental health condition of hair pulling, where I can, boldly make that statement. And what is hair pulling? So, like I said, hair pulling is a mental health condition. I didn't know that when I was a teenager. I was just engaging in this, quote unquote, bad habit because it felt good, because I was under, social, physical, emotional dysregulation, and it was the way my body and my mind subconsciously chose to cope with all of the chaos around me. And I hid it for a really long time, for those 30 years that I'm talking about now, because I was ashamed of what I was doing to myself. Like, that's gross to pull out your hair. That's, that mentality, that judgment, that rejection, that fear, that shame, is what I lived with. And so I hid it, as I didn't want anyone to know that I had this thing, that I did this thing. And I didn't want to give anyone even more reason to kind of, you know, lay that label of weird on me that I already probably had, because I was different from the other kiddos at school.
Whew, I
Um,
can. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I think we
Go
got
ahead.
crossed there
Go
for a
ahead.
second. I wonder if you might be able to share a little bit about what those first months and years with this as a part of your life felt like. I'm sure it was very scary. You were young, so you're probably like, "What is going on here? I can't stop this." But it makes me feel better. Like, what is this weird place I find myself? This dance, really, of coming to understand your mental health and also, maybe not being so satisfied with this thing that you don't really know what to do with or anything about.
Yeah, I love how you use the word dance, because that's really what I've come to now, is all of life's challenges are just dances. We use the word struggle. And the moment we use the word struggle, we put it in a box of pain. But when we say it's a dance, it puts it in a fluid area of space, allowing us to move with it and to move through it with joy. So even those hard, painful things, we can move through them with joy. So when I was a kid, it was the hard, painful thing. It was this struggle. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just pulling my hairs and it felt good. And my dad was sick with cancer and I literally would just pull hairs. He's gonna die, he's gonna live, he's gonna die, he's gonna live. Just like someone would pull petals from a flower. He loves me not. And I used to do he loves me not for like the cute boy in school who didn't know that I existed, right? That kind of thing where I didn't know that it was a mental health condition. I just knew it was something that I shouldn't be doing and I shouldn't let anyone else know that I do this. And so I hid it and I did it and it felt good in the moment, and then afterwards it would just be this cycle. And then even getting into college, I would tweeze my eyebrows like uncontrollably. I would be pulling in class, like wherever I was, it didn't matter. I even remember now, after starting HabitAware, I remember a college friend of mine who's still a really good friend of mine. She's like, "Oh yeah, I remember you would lay on the floor in our dorm room and you would be pulling and chatting with us." And but it didn't click for any of us that there was, this was something we should maybe talk about or maybe get a hold of or try to understand. It wasn't until my mid-20s when I Googled, or sorry, not Googled, my age is showing, Yahoo searched, why am I pulling out my hair, that I found it was a mental health condition. And during that time, I was going through a lot of emotional turmoil. So adding a mental health, even though it wasn't a true diagnosis, it was Dr. Internet diagnosing me. It was something that then dropped me further into a depression because that was the last thing I needed in that moment of time, of all the other stuff coming at me with a bad breakup and grieving the loss of my father from, a few years prior that I had just kind of stuffed down for so long. And so the hair pulling just became this vehicle for me to keep going forward in life, dealing with the things I was dealing with and coping with them without having to really cope with them, without having to really face them, until one day that became unsustainable any longer. And a few years ago, I was pregnant with so about 10 years ago, actually, I know exactly, 10 years ago, I was pregnant with my first child, and my husband and I live here in Minneapolis, and I had pulled out a full eyebrow one night, and at that point, 25 plus years into hair pulling, I had gotten a rhythm down of pull a little from here, a little from here, a little from here, cover it with black eye pencil so that no one would really know what is happening. And they may look at me weird and try to figure out something's wrong with their face, but they couldn't really pinpoint, oh, there's no eyelashes. But that night, I just was under a lot of stress, and probably the hormones also had something to do with it, and lack of sleep, and pull. And in the morning, I was getting up to get my black eye pencil, and my husband was walking out of the bathroom, and boom, he was bumped into me and said, "Where are your eyebrows?" And that was the moment where I, deer in headlights, had no excuse ready, and just finally blurred out, "I have hair pulling, trichotillomania, blah, blah, blah." I don't even know what I said because I was an out-of-body experience. But from there, he took to the internet to try to understand what this condition was, why I had such shame around it, why I didn't share with him to begin with, what I was holding on to with that, lack of trust, right? I was just scared that he would reject me. But he met me with so much compassion and love. And then in the coming days, he started noticing when I was pulling my eyebrows, we're watching TV, and he gently grabbed my hand. And that was this aha moment of, oh, if I just had something to notify me, could I take control of this subconscious behavior? And the answer was, I don't know, let's build it and find out. And that's what we did.
Wow. That's, I'd love to backpedal just a bit. I love that the product came out of a loving gesture by your husband, the first person to ever really become a part of this journey with you knowingly, which I find very beautiful. It's very, feels like meant to be that that was the moment. You opening up and being vulnerable and sharing brought on like the universe giving you your first like pat on the back, like it's gonna be okay.
Yep.
Like you
And
shouldered
even
this burden for long enough. Like it's
yeah,
time now. You're gonna
yeah,
be okay, and you're gonna help
yeah,
people. Like it's so beautiful.
yeah. And even the universe gifting me him. And like it was meant to be that he was meant to be my husband, to be with me as my partner in this journey of building this company and building this bracelet. Like if it was a different guy, I don't know what I'd be like. I wouldn't be doing this work, you know? I wouldn't be in
Yeah.
this community. I wouldn't be supporting this community the way that we do today. And I have my dad to thank for that. And losing him, I actually gained a friend in high school because her dad was not part of my dad's care team, but was in our Indian family community and just would help out and would answer questions for us and was just a huge support and just good family, became very good family friends. And his daughter was one of my good friends in high school, and she's the one that introduced me to my husband Samir. And so without
Oh,
my dad being sick, I would have never met this girl. I would have never become really great friends with her. She would have never known to connect me to this really great man that's now in my life as my husband. And so again, going back to that idea of life as a dance, like when I can look at my dad's battle with leukemia as a dance even for myself, right, outside of the battle itself, but what it did to the 14 to 17-year-old child that I was, it gave me all these other gifts. And it truly is just poetic and magical and musical in that sense of it was really, really hard to watch him suffer, and for myself to go through the suffering that I was going through tangentially because of it. But in the end, the universe was guiding us for purpose.
it's really rare that I get to speak with a business owner who I'm very keenly aware of, who understands what really matters. Not that not everyone does, but when you have such a impactful loss, one of two things happen. You grow through it, or you kind of like go through it. And there are a number of people that I've met that have taken the worst thing that ever happened to them and turned it into the best thing that ever happened to them. And I know it's a very difficult thing to do. My dad had head and neck cancer for 20 years. He was diagnosed when I was 12. Definitely was the journey and trajectory of my life path and my life journey. It was meant to be this way. It was a high sacrifice and burden for him to bear and to pay for my benefit, but it did absolutely change my life for the better and the path that I'm on. So I understand very deeply. Something that was so difficult for you has now turned into one of your life's greatest purposes and missions. And I know that suffering does suck, but it seems to have really brought a lot of clarity and peace to your life. And with something that is not at all peaceful or clarifying of a thing to battle, you seem very much on a journey of healing. And that's really beautiful to see and for you to share.
Yep, 100%. And I send you so much love and strength right now for
Thank you.
the journey that you've been through, right? And it's we all have something in our lives that's the thing. And some of us may even have multiple the things, right? Of pain, of challenge, of despair, of struggle, of of just like suckiness, for lack of better word, right? Like why me? Why does this have to happen to me? But if we just flip that question of not like why me, woe is me, but why me? Why me? What am I meant to do with this? how am I meant to grow from it, like you said, right? How am I meant to make my life rich from this pain? And I always say, like, turning your pain into purpose. It's there for a reason. I ran for so many years up until, my father passed away at 17, hair pulling, college, out of school, working, mid 20s. For all that time, probably like 5 or 6 years, I ran. I ran with alcohol, I ran with work, I ran with partying, I ran with, dancing on tables, to ignore and to push down all this pain. And then it finally all bubbled to the surface, and I exploded into a massive depression and a suicide attempt in my mid 20s, and all culminating with me leaving my job, going traveling for a while to try to reconnect with my family back in India and reconnect with what was important in life and really try to just get back to just a solid ground, right? So we were saying before of it's taken work to get to this point of clarity and peace, which now that I have it, anything that comes my way now, I'm going to meet that challenge with this clarity and peace and be ready to dance instead of struggle, instead of battle. Because I know now that if that thing is coming at me, it's coming at me to do something for me, not to me. And so I'm going to take it by the hand. I'm going to invite it in for tea. I'm going to ask what it needs of me. And it's going to make it look easy for someone else on the outside because I've gotten to this understanding.
Whew. It's a mouthful. It really is one of those things where once you understand, your life does truly change for the better because there's a lot less questioning and there's a lot more trusting. And I think in those moments of trust, it's really where you kind of crack the portal between like all the things that are waiting for you and like that mindset that's just been really like shielding you from being able to see and feel these things for so long, to where it can kind of get overwhelming if you aren't able to take the things coming at you in both a good way and a logistical way. So like you said, kind of looking at things like, well, how can I benefit from this rather than immediately taking it to a negative place. And just that mindset shift alone, which honestly, the moment my dad quit breathing, I was like, oh my God, nothing matters. Like zero things matter in this life, literally negative. If my family is healthy and I am breathing and alive, I have no problems. Anything that happens in my day is just an issue. But never again in my life, God willing, will I have problems outside of like people aging gracefully and passing in their sleep. Like that's what I'm looking for in life. So when you do understand that, whew, it really cracks the ceiling with what you are capable of because there's no more impediments. Your mindset used to be the impediment, and now it's you exploded it and it came back in a million different pieces and brought the universe back with it. And now they're symbiotic. And when that happens, I think it's like the best thing I could ever wish for anybody ever is for that moment to happen, because that is when you truly feel so giving and grounded in who you are and what you have to give and what your value is, that you really just start making decisions that are for you, but also for others, because you're living with that higher vibration of like, no, this isn't a problem. That's hunger. That's a problem. This person's struggling with this habit that they have that's causing them strife. That's a problem. Like me waiting too long in Starbucks, not a problem. Like get your priorities, get your priorities in line. So I love that you're in that place in your life because you're moving so many mountains for people that aren't in that place yet. And I love very much so that you're creating something to help them reinforce happy, positive habits. So can you talk about body focused repetitive behaviors and where you kind of were able to align the Keen wearable with the various habit trackers that are needed to kind of keep the three specific body focused repetitive behaviors in check from a habit perspective?
Yep. Yeah. So, as I was saying before, hair pulling is a mental health condition, and the umbrella condition that it lives under is called body focused repetitive behaviors, BFRBs. So, that includes things like hair pulling, which is trichotillomania, is the medical term, skin picking, for that, dermatillomania is the medical term, and nail biting, which is anechophagia is the medical term. And then there's a host of other body focused repetitive behaviors as well, like lip biting, nose picking, cheek biting, finger picking, like basically anything where you're engaging and leveraging your body as that soothing mechanism, that go to. And, it's a spectrum. So for it to be a mental health condition, it needs to be repetitive. It needs to be something you've been trying to stop but can't. And it has to have had some sort of impairment on your daily life. Like, like for example, for myself, I, you know, kind of avoided certain social situations because I didn't want to be caught or found out, right? And so I'm making decisions based on this behavior. It means that I'm not living the life that I want to be living that rich life, right? So those are the conditions, and essentially, that moment after sitting with Samir and him taking my hand, and that aha moment of, oh, I wish I just had something that notified me, we set out to first not going straight to technology, but knowing obviously a wearable was the form factor we would eventually go to. First, it was just kind of the hypothesis of, does this idea of me knowing where my hands are, that my hands are near my eyebrows, help me in building awareness and in making new habit choices? And the answer was yes. We just used things off the shelf. We went to Michael's arts and crafts store and made a little bracelet system that would ring, the bells would ring whenever my hand went up, and it was noisy, and it was, every time my hand moved, it kind of would alert me, but mostly this hand up motion. And so it was helping. And so we said, okay, now let's move to the next step. And we had moved here to Minneapolis a year or two prior, I want to say. And during that time, to make friends, I started going to startup-y meetups because I was in advertising and really into digital production and web apps and mobile apps and technology. And so started meeting people that way. And that's how we met our two technical co-founders, and they built a rudimentary prototype that again started working using the hand motions and other sensors. And so we just kept going, we just kept pushing, and the universe kept opening the doors for us because it was helping me. And as we kept going, we realized there's millions of people, like 1 in 20 people has one of these conditions to a degree where it's debilitating, where it's limiting the life that they want to lead. And so we just kept going. We have research grants now from the NIH and the NSF, so they're a true testament to, it's the most common disorder you've never heard of, but within the medical field, it's starting to become a little bit more talked about, a little bit more known. And even just seeing the Google search term from when we started in 2014, 2015 to now, we played a role in awareness, in people understanding what these things are. So it's super exciting. But that's how we got started. It was right around the time that Kickstarter was new-ish. So I had actually seen a similar concept of, it was a belt that would alert you to poor posture. So I actually, jumped on that Kickstarter because I don't have great posture. I still don't. But that concept of your body's engaging in something, a vibration to alert you, and then to allow you to make the choice of how you redirect, right? How you leverage that level of awareness, that power of awareness. And so we said, let's try to build something for our wrist that's wrist motion based. So you train it for the behavior that you do. So right now I'm just sort of stroking my eyelashes, my eyebrows back and forth. And then within 3 seconds, it's looking for that mathematical calculation, and will send a vibration when it gets a match. And that vibration is just shifting it from subconscious to consciousness. And that's what we launched with in 2017, is just simply making you aware and then putting it on the person with the BFRB to then figure out what to do next and how to replace the behavior with what they truly need. And now, being in business for 6 years, helping tens of thousands of people through video training calls, through the bracelet, through our online community, our webinars, our coaching calls, our, all these different ways, we've probably talked with the most people in the BFRB community of any institution or any like community member, to the point where we have a deep understanding of what these behaviors are and the trends around them, and the patterns that most people in the community go through and feel. And from that evolved our behavior change methodology, which we call love, strength, and awareness. And those are the three things we believe that you need in order to take control of these conditions and change your life. And so that's the other piece that we've added to the puzzle that allows you to now, the bracelet is the awareness and that vibration, and then our e-course on love, strength, and awareness is the now what. What do I do once I'm aware, right? How do I learn to take control and change the behavior? And then we have an online community that allows a person to not go it alone and to heal with other people who are on the same journey with us and other teammates who have gone through this as well, to support and motivate and keep you going.
Whew, I'm a crier. You got me. I'm in. I'm crying. It's so beautiful, the work that you have done, and 6 years is a long time, certainly, but you're just getting started, which I think is really beautiful. Honestly, it's always, for me, I love so much when someone makes something that would have changed their life at a really formative time for themselves. I'm big on shadow work. I'm big on inner child work, trauma work, mother wounds, the whole nine. And for me now, it's really led me to understand that the part of people's stories that I love the most are figuring out when the seed was planted for them to become that greatest version of themselves that they truly needed when they were younger. And I love that your particular journey is leading you to a place where it went from being something that like got whispered about in school to like you're now the one of the leading voices and authorities on people that didn't even know other people had this, let alone that there's hope. And don't even get me started on them not having to be medicated now, because it's something as literally simple as support, a community, and a wearable that helps you to retrain your brain, because you're not sick. They're not broken. You can rehabilitate this. It may take a long time, but you do have the capacities to do so now with your invention. Like another medication off the table that doesn't need to be taken. Bravo. Like that's really difficult to do.
Yeah.
I wonder, how does this impact your soul? All of this. This is a lot for someone that just came up with this to help themselves. You're getting a really beautiful fallout from this. So I'm very curious to know your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of spiritual work right now. I'm coming from an Indian background, so looking at Hinduism. My mom went to a Christian boarding school in India, so like for us, when they moved here in 1975, they would go to church, right? So like, and I lived in a very Jewish neighborhood growing up. For me, religion is like a political pawn. It's more about connection to a higher power and spirituality. And so I take from kind of all the religions that I've been put in contact with and researched, and looking more closely at the Hindu religion and the Sikh religion, and to start, and there's so many more. I was just talking to someone who's Quaker last week, and I'm like, I need to look into this one now, because everyone says similar things, but in different ways, in terms of these different ways of believing in higher power, right? And for me, spirituality, and you mentioned the soul work, it's all the same, right? It is that. And for me, I think looking specifically at the Hindu and the Sikh modalities, there's a few things that overlap. One is sort of detachment from ego, detachment from outcome, detachment from material things, and then this idea of sort of always be in balance. So like when a good thing happens, it's not jump for joy. It's just, oh yeah, cool, that good thing's happening. And when a bad thing happens, it's not cry into the deepest, depths of a river. I don't know what I'm trying to say there, but it's just like, oh yeah, that sad thing's happening right now, right? Which I'm not there yet. I'm still working. I'm still learning. I'm still honing that skill. But as you ask about soul work, like that, I believe is what we're here for on this earth. Is we're here to figure out what are we here for. And when we do that, it's only when our mind, our body, and our soul are fully connected. Until then, if we're just doing the mind work or just doing the body work or just doing the soul work, we're not in alignment, right? And so finding that alignment is what I truly believe it is to live on this earth. And that other piece of the Hindu and Sikh religions is this idea of service as part of that, right? And so that's what I see, is that I've turned my pain into purpose so that I can serve others going through that same pain, and hopefully they don't have to see it as a pain, they can see it as a dance instead, and not have to go through as much pain, right? Not have to go through as much negativity, as much despair, as much debilitating journey, and hopefully it just becomes so much smaller for them, so much faster through the work that we do with them and for them.
Oh, it's so beautiful. And you're ultimately just passing on a very truncated version of your healing and your journey into a wearable that does give them the one authority to take control over their journey, which is very, like, the autonomy alone of that decision is probably very uplifting for people that have felt nothing but struggle. And it is one of those things where family members may not always be so supportive. And it could be something you do definitely feel the need to hide. But I love that just the stigma alone of not wanting to acknowledge that you have it. And now there's a wearable that you have that you can look to for support rather than needing to go inward and feel shame. It's like, well, no, I am taking control of this. This is something I'm working on, and I'm not going to pick myself apart for it. Not, no pun intended, but there's no need to add salt to the wound of working on yourself and then allowing what others think of you to really like bastardize that. So I do really love that you've given very cute options for the wearable. I'm sure, young girls appreciate the fashion
Yeah,
aspects of what you're creating for them.
yeah,
But the
yeah.
manufacturing of this specific item, I wonder if, they know how much detail and effort went into creating a product like this, because there's, tons of wearables on the market for all different kinds of things, but that doesn't make it an easy thing to make, especially for something as industry disrupting as what you've done. So, would you mind sharing with us from a business perspective, were there any hurdles throughout the creation process that were a little difficult to navigate because this kind of was the first thing of its kind to be made for this purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they say hardware is hard for a reason. It is. There's so many aspects of, from electronics to electronics sourcing to electronics, the board inside, the circuitry, like then the casing, the industrial design, the manufacturing of that. Like you can work with someone to make something look really cool, but then if you can't mass manufacture it, you're back to the drawing board. And so it's really, really important. We really got lucky with going to HACS, which is a hardware accelerator program, which was based in Shenzhen, China. So in 2016, Samir, my husband, myself, our then 3-year-old child, and John, our hardware engineer co-founder, the four of us went to China for 3 or 4 months to go through this
Cool.
program, and they really connected us into the manufacturing scene. John is an electrical engineer, so he was very well versed in the circuitry of the bracelet, the electronics. And then Hax was an extension of our team, helping us with industrial design, mechanical engineering, design for manufacturing, to make sure that, we didn't go to a factory with plans and they respond with, oh, we can't build that because of whatever reason, right? Like it's going to break in production or whatever. And we still have some of that. And working with our partner, that's the work you have to do is in hardware is you can come up with the most beautiful thing, but then if you cannot bring it down to something, to a size that is going to be acceptable for a kid to wear, for example, or even down to the colors, or down to the watch buckling, like how are we going to do the watch buckle? All of these things came into play, and we have had to learn by doing a little bit, because we're not experts in making smartwatches. We're not experts in those in that. We're getting there. We've done it now multiple times, so we're asking. We know what questions to ask. We know how to prepare files. We know all of that stuff. But the core of what we do is really around the BFRB management, and the bracelet is a tool to get us there. And John's done a phenomenal job of building the relationships, both in the US and in China, for the right people to come to the table when we need them, for that expertise to make sure that what we're designing not only works, but looks good and can be manufactured with little sort of waste, if you will, so that we can help as many people as we can.
That's so cool. Definitely so cool. And I love that the invention process happened to you, in essence. I'm sure this wasn't like something you were even considering would be something you had to learn and like pick up over time and become an expert in order to help all of these people. So I do really appreciate your entrepreneurial journey, simply for the fact that you've, one, been able to help yourself, two, been able to help others. And it sounds like all while doing things that were not in your wheelhouse, which is really special. It just shows the dedication that you and your husband and your partners had to making this thing really come to life. I think it's these kinds of ideas that really step very far away from the box are always great ideas, but even, rarer do they become a great product, because making it an actual product is where the work is. It is where 99% of the bottlenecking is. And for you to be on the other side of that and now have a few iterations of it, that's really cool to hear and to see. And I hope for those of you listening that are interested in creating something, anything, this is a testament that it can be done. And, there's no real thing other than time that you need to have on your side to just allow the journey to unfurl and take what you need to take from the process, just as you
Time
have. It's
and the right team, 100%. Without John and Kirk, we would not be talking right now. We have all of our different expertises at the table, and I think that's part of the reason why we've been able to accomplish so much, is because we have core hardware, software, firmware, engineering in-house, and with their skill sets to be able to get us pretty far, in the journey, and then pulling in other people as we need and as we keep growing and going, to make it happen. But yeah, like, if you have an idea and if you're ready to turn your pain into purpose, like, rock on. That's what you're here for, and the doors will open. That's kind of this idea of what I call serendipity as a strategy, is the more you put yourself out there, the more you, like, my mantra, and when I wake up in the morning, is that the right people come in my path to help me, and also the right people come in my path that are receptive to my help, right? And so when we put ourselves out there, we serve others, others tangentially are doing the same for us and opening doors for us. That's how the universe works, through others. And so if you have an idea, if you have a pain point that you want to turn into your purpose, just start and start sharing and start talking to others and start helping others on their stuff. And you just watch and see the magic for the doors to open for you.
So true. And it's a beautiful way to go about building your community because your community is authentically brought together. And it wasn't done with get get email scams, get emails quick scams. You can just know that they're there because they want to be there and they are ready to be served, which is a great place to find yourself as a business owner for sure. Do you guys have any plans on going to big box stores or do you really enjoy having like complete control over what you're doing?
Yeah, so we went direct to consumer for a reason. One is most people don't know what these conditions are, but if you have one of these conditions, you know where to go. You come find us at habitaware.com. But big box and other things, I think as we continue to grow the business and as just awareness of these conditions becomes a little bit more normalized, if you will, then I think we will be in a position to knock more strongly on the doors of a Target or a CVS pharmacy or that kind of thing. That's, you know, my one day vision. We're, like I mentioned before, we have research grants from the NIH and the NSF. So right now we're doing our phase 2 NIH research grant, which is not a scientific way of putting it, but I like to say putting a bow on it in a sense of how the bracelet works and how the app works to help someone take control, and then from that a clinical study to prove that that system that we've built works. And I think from that validation, I would hope to see some of those doors, like you're talking about, big box stores, open for us. We are also available on Amazon. That's obviously a little bit different since anyone can be on Amazon, but that's one of our avenues of help making sure people can find us. And yeah, like, rock on. I appreciate you dropping that seed for us because now let's make it happen, right? Like, that's the vision, is how many people can we serve and where do we need to be as a business in order for people to know about us? Right now, we highly depend on word of mouth and storytelling, because when someone has a good experience and they share that into an online support group that they may be in and tell others, that's how people can find us. Because again, nobody's talking about these issues. So no one's sitting at the dinner table and saying, "Oh yeah, I have this bracelet and it's helped me do this," because no one's going to have that conversation because of the quote unquote shame around it. But in safe spaces, these conversations are happening. We do doctor outreach, so treatment. We have probably around 1,000+ treatment professionals that recommend the product to their patients,
Very cool.
and we have patients that are telling their doctors about it, and vice versa. And so, it's awesome when we get an email from a doctor being like, "My patient brought me this. I want to learn more," because it's really
Very cool.
it's really this idea, like you were talking about before, there's no magic pills, there's no cures for many things. But when we take ownership of our health, we can do it. We can take control. And when we can leave it out of the traditional healthcare model, which is quite frankly not really designed for us to stay healthy, and we can kind of self-help ourselves in community with other like-minded people that have been on the journey and that can guide and support and motivate, then you don't need, you save that beast of a system for when you have a beast of an issue, if you will.
I believe as well that you're really saving people from a litany of medications that will only lead them to abusing them in the future. I can think of a few girls that I went to school with that in middle school, it was apparent they were pulling their hair out. They were doing it during school. And there was that moment where they were then medicated and then they were not themselves. And then it led down a very tumultuous path of medications that we're never the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
there
we're
is
the
no
only
medication.
option. And now you are an option. So I
Yeah.
think it's just really
Yeah.
beautiful to have seen that
Yeah.
revelation in my lifetime of there not being an option, medicine thrown at it, to now there's a viable option that is not only harmless, it's helpful.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and there is no medication that's been specifically designed for these conditions. So it is really just like throwing spaghetti and seeing what sticks when it comes to
Yeah.
leveraging other mental health medications. And every body is different, so that chemical reaction is going to be different for everyone.
Very true. Very true. Ugh, medicine. I would love to know what you're particularly proud of with HabitAware, or Keen the bracelet. Like, what are you just feeling so proud and so happy of at the moment with the work that you've done?
Yeah, I keep coming back to this one email that's from right when excuse me, right when we started. It was it was a mom who wrote in and just was like, "Thank you. You know, my son used to come home off the bus and go straight to his room and hide, and now he comes home and he wants to talk about his Keen stats." Right? And so shifting that conversation from shame and blame and fear to compassion and understanding and love. And so knowing that we've changed that child's trajectory is the thing that keeps us getting up in the morning to keep doing this, and knowing that it's not just that one off, that there's so many more. And reminding ourselves most of our support tickets are negative, right? Because that's what people need help, and that's totally fine. But it always helps to hear those stories, because it just motivates us to keep going and to keep improving and to keep remembering that that little Aneela is still out there, and their life can be better if I keep doing what I'm doing. And it's the same for the person listening right now. Like, there's someone out there that's in your shoes where you were, you know, however many years ago, and you could be doing something today that could help them. And like, that's so immensely powerful. Like, just sit with that for a second, that you could be sitting here wherever you are and yet come up with an idea that can transform the life of someone full off across the world in the day and age that we live in.
It's a beautiful sentiment. I love that a lot. Thank you. And it is true. It's very true. You never know the impact you're going to have. You never know how far or how wide. All from one decision, which is to me, the beauty of life. We get to do this every day, guys. So you might as well keep making the choices that keep taking you a step closer to helping more people. It will satisfy you in ways that money never could. And, you know, in those moments where you're really helping out a lot, you sometimes still get a very beautiful financial windfall. So
Yep.
the odds
Yeah.
are ever in your favor when you're helping. And I think that's super important to remember. Okay, my final question for all of my guests is, Aneela, how do you make your life rich?
Oh, I love that. So that's the work I'm doing now. I have gone through in 2022. I'm going to share this story very quickly. I don't mean to rush through it, but for me, like I've said, I am at a state of calm when it comes to this. In 2022, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I had a double mastectomy. And like I said, I looked at it and I invited it in for tea and I danced with it and I said, "What are you here for?" And I, fell into a depression because I thought my life was going really, really great, and like, boom, this thing. But coming out of it, worked with my therapist in identifying my values and realized I was doing too much. I was spreading myself too thin, giving myself here, giving myself there, and not giving enough to my family and my BFRB community, which is what going through that values exercise helped me hone in on what's important. And that is sort of how I now spend my time. If it's not my family, my BFRB community, or the creative things that I want to spend my time on, or the spiritual activities that I want to spend my time on, or the travel and adventure stuff, it's a no for me. And that's kind of how I have come to finally realize, by focusing on what matters to me in my life versus what matters to someone else for my life, I can make my life rich.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And thank you so much for sharing that. I wish you all the health possible, all the health you can muster.
Yes, and I'm completely healthy. I have to take medication, and I'm on board for it for, 5 years. I'll do what I need to do.
Oh,
But totally healthy, and that's also why I was like, I'm gonna rush through this, because for me, I, I, I actually don't even like to say I had breast cancer, because it was such a quick journey.
hmm.
I wish there was another word for it, because I didn't have to go through chemo and I didn't have to go through radiation, which are like the two things that people think of the moment you say the word cancer. But I also like to think that part of the reason and it wasn't totally smooth. There were lots of ups and downs in the last year of going through it, but it was manageable because of my attitude of, what is this here for me? How can I use this to improve my life? And I think that attitude actually helped me get through it in a way that makes it such that I can speak about it so nonchalantly now. Whereas when I still talk about my dad's cancer, I can't, right? Like, it's a little bit harder for me to, like, think about,
Yeah.
because there's some more pain associated with it.
Wow. That's a really beautiful growth. And I think a beautiful way to kind of assess trauma and what it does for you, or, where you're able to embrace it now, which is beautiful. And it truly does make business a breeze,
Yeah.
when your biggest problems are sourcing microchips or something technical like that, compared to a body and its very mindful fragility that it brings to our awareness every now and then, I think is just a really beautiful way to keep your life in check. And I thank you so much for sharing your journey and your story. I think it's going to be really helpful for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. And I'm so excited to see what is in store for you and your company. This is literally the infancy. You're just touching the tip of what's possible with 1 in 20 people having one of these particular ailments that they would love to do something about. I think it's only a matter of time before everyone in that community knows your name, and you're just going to be helping so many people. It's going to be cool to say I knew you when.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, I so appreciate all of those sentiments and those words, and planting those seeds for us, that yes, everyone in the
Yes.
community knows us for the good we can do for them. And I love what you're doing with this, and I really hope that your listeners are finding their way to making their life rich, however they define that for themselves.
Oh, thank you so much. This was so great. I thank you so much for being on the show. And everyone, go check out the show notes. There will be plenty of show notes for you to check out the product, be able to purchase one. Maybe there's information you want to share with your doctor. All that good stuff will be listed in the show notes. Aneela, thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome. Amazing.
Thank you. It was great to meet you and connect with you.